Hi everybody, welcome back. In this video we're going to go over how to create the charts and graphs that we looked at in the last section. I'll tell you this week, this unit is the most Excel intensive part of the course. That's good. That means that you're going to be learning more about Excel this week than other weeks, but it does mean that Excel-wise it might be a little bit harder. So I encourage you, especially this week, to follow along in your own Excel worksheet. I am putting these data sets, a link to them up on the Canvas website. So another thing I need to say about this is that, unfortunately, the capabilities we need in this section in Excel are just not there for the online version. So we're going to need to use the desktop version. The bad part about that is that there might be some slight differences between Macs and PCs, but those are really slight. So, if you have any trouble with that, let me know, and I can, I will find an answer for you. All right. So, let's look first at the sides data. So, for this, what we want is a frequency table. And the frequency table is going to be the harder part here. So to do all of these tables, we're going to use something called a pivot table. Pivot table is a really powerful tool in Excel. So let's highlight our data. And then we're going to go to Insert. And I have checked, this is the same on PC and Mac. Pivot table. Now, if you're on a PC, you can do recommended pivot tables. Macs, I don't believe, have that. So let's just do pivot table. And it's going to ask us to select, and we want the whole thing there. And we want this to go in a new worksheet. So just leave that the way it is and select OK. And over here, this is our pivot table dialog box, I guess you'd call it. This is our variable side. And we want to create a table that's got all of the sides listed. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it over here to where it says rows. Okay? And I'll put it back so I can show you again. I'm going to take this, pick it up with my mouse, and drag it and drop it down here under rows. And you see here it told me that we've got coleslaw, corn on the cob, fries, and green beans. And then there's a row for blank. Now that does not give us our frequencies though. To get our frequencies, we have to take this same variable and pick it up and drop it again, but this time under values. Okay, so I'm picking up this variable, dropping it under values. And that gives me my frequency table. Okay? So, we can't really change these. Where it says row labels, that kind of stuck being row labels. But the count of the sides, that's good. Down here, you can change. There are other options. And this is under where it says count. You can go to value field settings. There might be times when you would want something besides the count. But we're just going to leave that as count. Another thing that is really helpful, if you want these to be frequencies, relative frequencies, two ways you can do that. One is you can just add a column over here and put equals that cell divided by, and click on the grand total. And then you should be able to copy this all the way down. Nope, that doesn't work. This is not the way I normally do this. So you could do equals that cell divided by the grand total, and keep going all the way down. That cell divided by the grand total equals that cell divided by the grand total, and that cell divided by the grand total. Okay, and then you don't want anything there. And that gives you the frequencies as well as the relative frequencies. The way I do it, though, is I click on one of these cells in this column, column B, and I right-click there, and where it says Show Values As, I put percent of grand total. Okay, and that's only going to work if you're in column B and you right-click, or whatever the equivalent thing is on a Mac. Show Values As, percent of grand total. Okay, and if you want them to go back to frequencies, you just pick No Calculation. Okay. And you'll see that when they're relative frequencies, they're the same as these ones we calculated. All right, so that's our first pivot table. I'm going to delete these because I don't care about those. By the way, in the notes, I typed these into a table, but you don't have to do that. You can just leave them just like this. That's fine. There's no reason for you to have to do that. That was just a convenient way for me to show my my graphs, or my tables. All right, so now to do the bar chart. We're going to highlight our data. Be sure to ignore the grand total. Don't include that when you're highlighting your data. And to do the bar chart, we're going to go to Insert, and then where it says Chart, we're going to pick this 2D column chart. Okay, pick the clustered column, and this gives us our chart. If you have your data showing as percent of total, that's what you're going to see on this y-axis here. You can go in here and change your titles. I like to see a title that makes sense. Something like frequencies, or relative frequencies in this case, of side order. To me, this legend over here isn't really adding anything, so I just click on it and hit delete. And there's one more thing. I like to see a label here. So if you go to Format Axis, nope, Add Chart Element. There we go. I always just poke around until I find what I want. So we said it was under Design, Add Chart Element. I want to add an axis title on the vertical axis. Okay, so again, that was under Design. And for that to show up, you have to click on your chart. So Design, Add Chart Element, Axis Titles, and then Primary Vertical. And I'm going to put an axis title there of, well, accidentally hit delete. So I'm going to put in there relative frequency. Take out what's already there. All right, so that's our bar chart. If we want to do the pie chart, we can select the same information. Be sure to not select your grand total, and then go to Insert, pick the pie chart. Don't do anything fancy. Those kind of things look... I hate those 3D pie charts. One thing to keep in mind with your graphs is that you want to keep them as simple as you can. You don't want to do something that looks, that just adds flash to it, because that doesn't really add anything useful. And then here we can mess with this the same way we messed with the other one. We can change the title. I'd like to add the data labels. So I click on the chart and then right click, Add Data Labels. And you have options where to put them. It doesn't really matter where to me. You can format data labels and put them someplace else. It's up to you. All right, so that's our pie chart. So that's how to do the qualitative graphs we did. So now let's look at our second graph, our second chart and graph. So this is with the staff on duty distribution. So we're going to do the same thing we did before with the pivot table. So we're going to highlight our column, go to Insert, Pivot Table, and we want it to go to a new worksheet. And once we do that, we've got the number of staff on duty. We want that to be our rows. And it's also going to go under values. You can see here, though, it defaulted to the sum, and we don't want that. So we're going to click on that on the drop-down thing here. And under Value Field Settings, we're going to change that to Count. And click OK. And now that tells us the frequencies. So we've got our number of staff on duty, 2 through 7, and then the frequencies. If we want to see the relative frequencies, we can go to Show Values as % of grand total. All right. So that's all you have to do there. If you want to do the cumulative, let's say you want to do the cumulative frequencies. Let's go back and change this to the just the plain frequencies, not the relative frequencies. So we'll change that to no calculation. You can just add a column here, cumulative frequencies. This first one is 2. The second one you can do, just add them up, or you can just type in 2 plus 7, either way. And then you can do just equals the one right next to it plus the previous cumulative. And if you keep going like that, you'll get your cumulative frequencies. All right, so that's our cumulative frequencies. And you know how to get the cumulative relative frequencies too. Just do that divided by 36. In this case, that's our sample size. And actually, let's see, did I? If we want to here, we can just do refer to the cell. And then if we do F4 to put in, oh, I clicked the wrong thing there. To get those to be $signs to fix that cell reference, we can just copy this down. And you see that it will continue to refer to cell C9 as we copy it. All right, so we can do that. And then just like we did before, we can do we can create the histogram using the bar chart capability here. And we go to 2D column, just like we did before. And we see our histogram. Don't think I forgot anything on that. All right, finally, this is going to add a couple more steps to it. So if we go to the sales data, we're going to start out with our pivot table the way we did before. We're going to highlight our column and go to Insert, Pivot Table. Click OK. And just like we did before, we're going to take sales. We're going to take this is our variable, and move it to rows. And we're also going to move it to values. Okay. Now you can see that that we've got the sum again, and we don't want that. We want that to be the frequency. So we're going to click the drop-down menu here and go to Value Field Settings. Change these to count. And now we need to categorize this. So we need to group these. So we're going to click in this first column, in column A. And this is not going to work if you click in column B. You've got to click in column A and click Group. This is going to create some defaults here. What we had was starting at 500, ending at 3,500 by 500s. Okay. So we started at 500. We went up to 3,500 by 500. Click OK. And so it's done now, our grouped frequency table. Okay, 500 to 999, etc. All right. So one thing I should point out here is that in our, well, a couple things let me point out here. In this distribution, we had a spot where a group where there was no data. We want to see that. We need to see that. Because the whole point here is to see how the data is laid out. And if there's a place where there's no data, when we do our histogram, we want to see a gap there. So to do that, we're going to go inside our pivot table. We're going to right-click in column A. And under Field Settings, again, we've right-clicked in column A, and we went to Field Settings. And then under Layout and Print, we want to put a check next to Show Items with No Data. Okay, and this is the main reason we couldn't use the online version of Excel, because I didn't see how this could possibly work, or how to group the data. Couldn't see how to group the data either. Anyway, so Show Items with No Data, and when we click OK, it'll give us a blank there for our category. All right, so now we've got our pivot table, and we can do our histogram. So let's highlight all of that, not including the grand total, and go to Insert, and we're going to pick our 2D column just like we did before. And this almost gives us what we want, but not quite, because you remember these bars need to touch. So I'm going to highlight on one of the bars, no matter which one, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go to Format Data Series. Okay, so on one of the bars, right-click, Format Data Series. And where it says Gap Width, we're going to decrease that to 0. Okay. And now we've got our histogram the way we want it. All right. There's just one other thing I should mention. I was maybe a little bit careless when I created these categories. The way they are in Excel is 500 to 999. And then 1,000 to 1499. And actually, technically, you know what, why don't we just label them like this? 500 to 999, like that. And then you don't have to worry about the interval notation. All right. So that's actually it for this section. I hope you follow along with that part. I'm sure you're going to have questions. And of course, as always, I'm happy to answer any questions you have or work with you in any way you need.